Welcome to Brave Conversations, where real stories lead to brave moves. I'm Barbie Armenta, storyteller, speaker, realtor, and guide for women navigating midlife transitions. If you're standing at a crossroads, wondering what's next, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Brave Conversations. I think I'm packing. That's what I heard myself say to my friend on the phone, and she didn't hesitate. She just said, "It's about time." I was walking through the house with a box in my arms, grabbing the kind of things you would take in a fire. Baby books, photos, random mementos. I hadn't planned to leave that day, but I just couldn't do it anymore. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's go back to the move to Southlake. Moving to Southlake had been an idea we had tossed around for a while. We looked in Southlake, Keller, Grapevine, but nothing felt right. Then one day, while we were in Keller, we met this builder that just casually said, "I've got this one lot left in Southlake if you want to see it." Of course I did. When I pulled up, my heart stopped. It was across the street from my best friend. Our middle sons would get to go to school again together. We'd be neighbors again. I couldn't say yes fast enough. But this time, we were building a completely custom home. And I got to draw my dream plans for the architect. A big kitchen with an island, a large covered patio, a pool, a big driveway in the back for a basketball goal, 3 bedrooms upstairs, and a massive game room for the boys, and a laundry chute for all the endless boy clothes and the Matchbox cars that somehow always ended up in there too. The plans were incredible. I loved going by and just watching the whole process. The concrete slab to seeing the framing and being able to make out where the rooms were. And then once the sheetrock up, it starts to look like an actual house. It was all so exciting, and I could not wait to move in. The Dawson was born right before we sold the house in Arlington. The timing wasn't ideal. The house in Arlington sold before the house in Southlake was finished. So we had to move into this 2-story condo with a garage. All 5 of us, 3 boys, all our stuff, and a parrot. My oldest slept on a futon in the living room, and the younger 2 boys, they shared a room upstairs. It was total chaos. We even celebrated Christmas there. And for some reason that I still cannot explain, I thought it was a good idea to buy the boys a train table, which was filled every last inch of any open space left in the living room. I mean, it was tight. But I kept telling myself, hope is just around the corner. The house is almost done. Around this time, we made another big decision. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom for the very first time. I loved being with my boys, but I had always worked in the beauty industry. I loved that salon world. I love having a career. But still, with 3 kids, schedules, childcare, this is what made the most sense. And I was excited and terrified. Then we moved in. The house was stunning. The corner lot on a golf course community, which I never imagined for myself. There was this rock wall fence around the back, a magnolia tree right outside my kitchen window, palm trees around the pool. The backyard felt like I was on vacation all the time. I loved sitting outside in the morning on the covered patio with my coffee, just listening to the waterfall. My friend had moved in before me, so she introduced me to all the neighbors. We had bunco nights, new friendships. We joined a small church nearby. We were building a life, and I was so hopeful that my marriage would get better too. We tried counseling. We went to church marriage retreats, but the truth is, I was always walking on eggshells. Home should be a place where you feel safe, where you can relax, you can be yourself, but that was not my reality. My husband would call to say he was on his way home, and I would immediately start scanning the house, just looking for anything that might set him off. A bike in the driveway could run an entire night. But the truth is, there didn't need to be a trigger. What's also true is that we have many special memories in that home. I absolutely loved being home with the boys. I could attend school plays, the kindergarten hootenanny. I wouldn't trade being able to pick them up after school. But one night I got a call from a woman who I'd never met. I only knew she was a Mary Kay lady. She invited me to what I assumed was a Mary Kay party, and I needed a night out with adults, so I went. But it wasn't a Mary Kay party, it was a prayer night. This was very different from bunco with the wine and all the things, but I was open. That night, a woman spoke from the book, "If you want to walk on water, you've got to get out of the boat." She told the story of Peter stepping out of the boat and walking towards Jesus. And as long as she stayed focused on Jesus, he could walk on water. But the moment he looked at the storm, he began to sink. But what I heard that night is that if I focus on Jesus and not the storm around me, that anything is possible. And I had a lot of storm around me. That after that night, I couldn't stop talking about that story. I was telling anyone that would listen, the Bible felt alive and relevant in my life. I was in scripture constantly. At one point, my husband said to me, "It's like you're walking around with blinders on." And I thought, good, it works. But the more time I spent in the Word, the more my eyes were open to the life I was living. And I believed I was protecting my boys, giving them this life I couldn't give them on my own. It was a beautiful home, great schools, stability. My husband was a great provider, but for him, I could never be grateful enough. But then it happened. 2 weeks before Christmas, he had been yelling for hours, and I sat on the bed with a pillow in front of me, just silent. By then, I had lost my voice. I knew if I spoke that everything would escalate. The last time that he stormed out of the room, I heard a crash, and I knew immediately what it was. I walked into the living room, and our Christmas tree was laying on the floor. The ornaments were shattered everywhere. I sat on the floor crying and picking up the pieces of my children's memories. Nick's football ornament, Mitchell's basketball, Dawson's Mike Wazowski ornament. And then I saw a sign on the bookshelf that said hope. And I realized I had lost mine. I cleaned everything up like I always did before the boys woke up. And the next day he apologized, and I didn't feel anything. I think he knew it. This time was different, and the anger didn't lift. If you're familiar with the cycle of violence, there's usually this period of walking on eggshells, and then there's an escalation, usually followed by a honeymoon period. I'd been in that cycle for a long time. I just didn't know it had a name. But this time was different. I realized that I was not protecting my boys, that this was the man that was teaching them to be men and husbands, and that was not okay. The next day, he left to take the boys to a football game, and I stayed home to finish the Christmas shopping. He was not happy about that. He left out the back door and then startled me coming back through the front door quickly. And then he slammed the door on the way out. I had looked many times online for the signs of verbal abuse, really more to prove that I wasn't. But I started to get on the computer again that day, just before he came back through the door. And then when he left, I didn't get online. I went to the garage, I found a box, and I started packing. I walked through the house with that one box, and then I packed clothes for me and the boys. I took everything over to my friend's house, and then I came back and waited. I don't know how long I stood in the kitchen, just staring out the window, watching the driveway with my heart racing. When they got back home, I asked the boys if they wanted to run to the store with me. I knew that they would, and we left. I didn't have a plan. I just had a place to land. I didn't really know what to do except to stay at my friend's house. At that point, her and her family had moved across town, and she said we could stay with them. I'm sure he thought I planned it. All I knew was that if I waited, who knows how much longer I would have been there. We spent a week at my friend's, and then a week at my sister's with her family, and then someone from church convinced my husband to move in with them and let the boys and I move back in the house. It wasn't long before we put the house on the market, and I filed for divorce. How did I get here again? What was my life going to look like now? Divorced twice with 3 kids? I didn't see that coming. But we moved into a duplex close by so I could try to keep the kids in the same school and I could figure out life. I had to close my small business that I had opened a couple of years prior, and I went back to what I knew, and I got a job managing a spa. This was not the life I imagined. I will say the divorce process was not easy, but that might be a story for another day. In the meantime, my boys and I were off to our next move, buying a home for the first time on my own and slowly finding hope, healing, and finally, myself.
Brave conversation.